This is Michael Popok, and it's time for Legal AF After Dark, the three-anchor edition. And we're talking about it in only the way we can. What just happened with the Fani Willis Nathan Wade evidentiary hearing in front of Judge McAfee in the Georgia election interference case? Why do I know everything about Nathan Wade and things I didn't want to know? Why do I know everything about Fani Willis and things I didn't need to know? And why is the judge allowing all of this? And what impact is it having on Fani Willis's continued credibility to be a prosecutor against Donald Trump and others? You've come to the right place. Legal AF, we break it down into the heart of the matter. We've got the leading former prosecutor out there, Karen Friedman Agnifilo, one of our anchors, and she, along with Ben Meiselas and me, break it all down for you right here, right now. Take a listen.
Karen, let's talk about what happened in Fulton County, this hearing purportedly about some conflict of interest between the Fulton County District Attorney's Office and their prosecution of Trump and Trump's co-defendants, because allegedly her relationship with the special prosecutor on her team, someone by the name of Nathan Wade, somehow this would be the allegations, has permeated the proceedings with impropriety, and I'm still unclear what the conflict is, the even purported conflict is, or why there's even a hearing now. I mean, I understand that there could say, oh, these are HR issues, and we get to the hypocrisy of that, but you want to say these are HR issues or whatever. But ultimately, any of the arguments where they even allege kind of a conflict of interest to me have been bogus. But break down what this is even all about and your observations, and then your own experience as a district attorney, the former number 2 at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, seeing Fani Willis take the stand like that. I really would love your perspective here.
I accidentally went down a Fani Willis rabbit hole this week. I did not plan on not doing anything else Thursday and Friday except watch these hearings, but that's what ended up happening. I was able to watch it on MeidasTouch. I love that we now broadcast these live hearings, and it's great because I can read the chats that people are doing, and Salty would bring me in and do some commenting in the middle of it. So yeah, I watched pretty much the entire thing so far. So let's just start with what is the allegation and what is the legal standard that Michael Roman and his other co-defendants have alleged, and that they are going to need to prove in order to basically disqualify Fani Willis from the case and get her taken off the case, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say that there's a conflict of interest that is disqualifying for the district attorney, Fani Willis, to prosecute this case. And the district attorney, if she is removed, the entire office is off the case. It has to be everybody works for her. So it's not like she's off and other people could work on it. So they'd have to give it to another office. So that would be a huge blow if that happens. And essentially what they alleged was that she hired somebody that she was having a romantic relationship with. And the reason she did it was because that way she could pay him all this money that she would then unjustly enrich herself with. That's to the extent that I've been able to glean what the conflict of interest they are alleging is. I think that's the best way to look at it. For a long time, I didn't understand what they were talking about because, frankly, they haven't articulated it very well in any of their papers or even in this hearing. But from what you can glean, I think that's what they are trying to suggest. So what happened was they made these allegations that they were living together and that he was paying for all these lavish vacations, and they put this in motion. And this went to the court, and the court issued a hearing, and basically a hearing to establish these facts, and said to Michael Roman and his lawyers, Ashley Merchant and the other defendants, but because he asserted it first, they were the ones who went first and were the main lawyers on this, put up or shut up, essentially. And that's, you're saying these things, so now I'm going to let you prove it. And so they started with Fani Willis's friend, Miss Bryant Yurty. They went to college together, and then they lost track of each other for years. And then about 10 years ago, they reconnected in Atlanta, and Miss Yurty at some point started to work at the DA's office, and then Fani Willis became district attorney. At one point, they had a falling out, and she was fired, or she was permitted to leave, so she didn't get fired. So she basically came across as a disgruntled former employee. That being said, substantively, she said that she believes that the relationship between Fani Willis and Nathan Wade started before the time that they alleged that Nathan Wade said in his affirmation that it started, and then and so therefore they're basically saying that Nathan Wade is lying and is misleading the court, which is in and of itself not a good thing, right? So now there's two issues before the court. Is there a conflict? And are there lies? Did Nathan Wade lie to the court? And that could be an issue in and of itself, right? If the judge doesn't finds credibility issues. So she testified, but what struck me about her testimony that I thought was very odd, and why I don't think the lawyering here was very good at all, is that they didn't ask her any specific details. She says, yes, I believe the relationship started before. And she said, yeah, I saw there was hugging and kissing, or a hug and a kiss or something. But again, what do they mean by relationship? When was this? What kind of hug and kiss? I mean, I've, hugged and kissed Ben and Popok, right? But it's not the kind of kiss that would mean anything, right? That's like a hello. It's a greeting. And so they didn't drill down on that at all. And so as a result, I don't think they established anything there in terms of dates, in terms of what the relationship was and what she knew. It was a very weird, thin record. Next, they called Nathan Wade to the stand. Nathan Wade testified that the relationship was what did not start until after he was already hired, and it also ended. And they are no longer in a relationship. He also talked about how there was no financial unjust enrichment. There was no financial benefit on the part of Fani Willis, because she always paid him back if they ever did anything together. And he was very clear. She paid him back because she's a proud woman and she pays her own way. And she would pay him back with cash. And what happened after that, to me, felt like I think I tweeted about it. It seemed like it felt like a verbal lynching of a Black man by white people, frankly, because the cultural disconnect between what he was describing and the incredulity that the white, seemed like the Southern old boys club and girls club down south. The incredulity that they imparted about the things that Nathan Wade would describe was just actually horrific to me, because he was describing how he and Fani Willis did things, and how Fani Willis was a proud Black woman and wanted to pay her own way, and she kept cash and paid cash, and they just didn't believe it. And as a result, this hearing went from what could have been a legitimate hearing where they talked about things like how did you calculate your hours? When you submitted your hours, who approved them? Did you have conversations about your hours? So talk about the money, talk about the unjust enrichment. That's the legal standard. Instead, we found out that Nathan Wade had cancer, that they had sex, that they went on vacations together. It felt like an icky, personal, salacious display of just really, really inappropriate for any kind of criminal hearing information. And it just went far afield. And the lawyers, frankly, got caught in the sex trap. That the sex part was just too, I don't know, salacious for them, that they had to go down that rabbit hole, and they absolutely did not focus on what the issues are, what the actual issues are. If they're really trying to get Fani Willis off the case, they should have focused on how was the hiring? Okay, so let me just finish where we left off. Fani Willis then calls herself to the stand. I mean, I think the judge was going to allow her to not be on the stand, but she was pissed. She got on that stand and she testified that, and I personally thought she came across as authentic, as credible. And at first I thought, oh God, please don't take the stand, because she seemed really emotional, and emotions really have no place in a court of law. But I thought she was actually, at the end of that, I thought that was the most authentic, truthful, credible testimony, frankly, I've almost ever heard in my life. And what's really fascinating to me is almost along gender lines, okay? Every woman I've spoken to feels the way I feel. And so many men I have spoken to thought she should not have testified, and that she was too emotional, and that she hurt her case, that she wasn't credible. And I didn't see that at all. I was shocked that anyone could think that. And she basically, they did the whole sex trap with her too. At one point, she seemingly was describing some very personal, embarrassing, sexual details about Nathan Wade and her. Again, what does that have to do with this case at all? Nothing, other than to embarrass. But she described how first of all, how Nathan Wade wasn't her first choice. Others had turned her down. She described the horrific sacrifice she's had to make by both being DA and prosecuting this case, how even before this case, how she would be called racist, horrible names and get death threats because she's a strong Black woman. And then she prosecutes this case. She had to move out of her home because the death threats were so terrible. The home she was sharing with her father, her elderly father, who also testified. He was, frankly, an adorable father who was really impressive. He went to Harvard. He advised Nelson Mandela. I mean, he had such an impressive man. He was a lawyer. And now he looks like anyone's dad. And he basically is like, yeah, I grew up in the South, in the racist South. He goes, I'd go places my credit card wouldn't be accepted because I'm Black and they won't take my checks. So I always carried cash. I always had cash. And I taught my daughter, my only daughter, always have 6 months of cash on hand. And, it was just, again, it was so real. And he talked about the awful sacrifices they have had to make by prosecuting this case, that there are people that he had to move out of that house too, that there are people who would spray paint and graffiti on their house, the N word and the B word and just other things, that they couldn't even live in their own home. This public servant who is doing nothing but her job here, and just because of prosecuting Donald Trump, and the dad had never met Nathan Wade. So the other couple of witnesses that testified, one was the governor, a former governor who's clearly very respected in Georgia, and he testified that he was one of the people that she asked to take this case. He says, no, I wasn't going to take this case, essentially because he didn't want to have security for the rest of his life because of the death threats. I mean, the fact that anyone who is going to protect our democracy is going to have to make that calculation between your own personal safety and death threats and having your life upended versus doing justice. Where are we in our society? I don't understand. And the one thing you haven't heard, though, from the testimony is any evidence, again, about what the financial conflict of interest could have been. Instead, I know way too much about Fani Willis's personal life, and it's kind of appalling and offensive that this even happened. I think Judge McAfee, who I've really liked up until this point, this is where his inexperience showed, because he really should have limited this hearing to facts that support what could be a disqualifying conflict of interest. The defense has definitely not met their burden. There's no way that she's going to be taken off this case unless, I have one caveat, unless something comes to light between now and the next week that she or Nathan Wade lied. Because if they did lie, and you lied to the court under oath, that is fatal to any determination. I think the judge would take her off the case. But other than that, I don't see a financial conflict of interest hasn't been established at this hearing.
Yeah, I would have liked to see Judge McAfee, if he was going to hold this hearing, actually do what the prosecution, requested is, let's at least kind of streamline the hearing to address the issue of conflict. And then you can kind of open it up to other witnesses as you kind of get through certain hurdles. But to start and make this about all of this salacious stuff, if you, for example, you talk about that the first witness who was, the purported friend who really didn't turn out to be that close of a friend, who was the disgruntled employee. When I saw the questioning by Roman's lawyer, to that witness, I said, so when did you see the romantic relationship? Oh, I saw the relationship for being romantic in 2019. And what about 2020? Was it romantic? Yeah, it was romantic. I mean, I was thinking the exact thing that you were saying, Karen. What did you observe? Like, I was yelling, I obviously had it muted. I was yelling at it. What did you observe? Did you see them? Were you there when they slept together? Did you go with them? I mean, you have to ask, did you see them kiss? I mean, what specifically did she tell you about the relationship? Did she say that they, if you want to go there, what words did she use to you? And you ask the questions in a non-leading way, and you get the witness to show, okay, so you may have saw them together and they hugged, and that's your only witness who's saying that there was a relationship that existed before the time that Nathan Wade was brought on in an official capacity in this team. It was not adding up, and the questions were not just intelligibly worded questions on that issue. So I agree with you. It was shameful to watch. I was glad, I suppose, that we could curate the content here at MeidasTouch, and get your perspective, because there was, again, when I compared our coverage here with you kind of leading the coverage in between the breaks to what I saw on other networks, it made me realize more and more and more. I'm like, okay, this is why I've basically quit everything else I'm doing to make this my life's mission. It reinforced that point to me, because I was looking what they were doing on some of our competitor channels, and on one of them too, which had horrible coverage of the issue. And I won't make this into an us v them thing here, but I'll just say there was one of their legal analysts who, by the way, had kind of connections to the Trumper side. They bring this person on, and after the very first witness, they post, "This is over. Fani Willis's case is dismissed. It's done." And I'm like, based on that, what are you talking about? Based on only one witness who was not presenting credible? And then, of course, Donald Trump and all the right-wing media then use that and post that. But if you wanted to come to an informed conclusion after watching all of the witnesses like you and I did, Karen, I'm fine with that. But who can judge it based on half of the testimony of one disgruntled employee who didn't say anything of specificity at all? It bugged me, but it reinforced why we need to keep building this network together, and why, again, it's such an honor to have perspectives like yours, who have really been in the trenches, who have led district attorney's office, who knows this area and could let people know, hey, this is normal, this is not normal, so that we could all, including myself, I mean, the amount of stuff I learned from you, Karen, from that from your coverage, was incredible. So I thank you for that, and it's great hosting this weekend edition with you. Popok's doing his baby moon. That's why I was hosting the midweek, but and Popok, we let him run to go to let him go to dinner right now. But Karen, any final perspectives from you before we go?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for letting me join on a Saturday. It's always fun to be with the boys. But yeah, I mean, that's why I ended up watching this entire hearing, and why I wasn't going to let go is I just couldn't believe, first of all, what an opportunity we had to essentially be in the courtroom ourselves, right? Normally, we're just relying on the reporting, and we're relying on what Donald Trump says, and we're relying on what other people say. And it's interesting how different it is when you see it for yourself. And for somebody who I've watched literally thousands of court appearances and court hearings. And I spent my entire career supervising or myself conducting trials, hearings, et cetera. I came up in the trial division of the Manhattan DA's office. Then I was the chief of the trial division. Then I was the chief assistant. But that's what my trajectory was. So there's almost nothing I have more experience doing than watching, or doing my own, but really watching other people and giving feedback and kind of knowing what you're supposed to do and not do. And so I really did feel this is such an important decision that is going to be made. And the accusations are really so huge and extreme. And to make that accusation about an elected district attorney that she literally hired her boyfriend and paid him more money than she should, had him bill extra hours just so that she can unjustly enrich herself and financially benefit from it. That's an accusation like no other accusation, right? You're basically impugning her credibility. And you better have the goods if you're going to make that kind of accusation, because if it's just they had an affair and that's it, right? I mean, is that a great thing to do? I mean, first of all, it's not. I would argue with the word affair because it's an adult consensual relationship with two single people. But of course, that is an HR situation that you deal with. It's probably not great to do it, from an HR perspective, but that's not what this is, right? This accusation. So to be able to watch it myself and to be able to give feedback is something that I felt was important to do, because I agree with you. I didn't feel the coverage was necessarily focusing on the issues. So I will continue to do this. The McAfee stuff is unique because you can see it for yourself.
Well, if you like law and politics shows where lawyers, who are the anchors, know what they're talking about, you've come to the right place. We call it Legal AF. The title is exactly what you think. We do it every Wednesday and Saturday, and we bring you the top 4 or 5 stories at that intersection of law, politics, and justice that we think you need to know. We curate it for you, bringing our 100 years of collective experience to you in bringing you our breakdown of these issues so that you understand them and you leave the show, hopefully with more knowledge than when you came in about the things we're talking about. You can watch us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. One place, you know where it is. Don't change the dial. The MeidasTouch YouTube channel, and we invite you, if you're not already there and part of our audience, we invite you to join. I almost said indict. I got Donald Trump on the mind. I'm sorry. In addition to that, you can pick us up on audio podcast platforms of your choice. If you know all about us, thank you for being back here and supporting Legal AF. Take that clip. Use it as a gateway podlet. Send it off to friends and family and people in your life and say, hey, you know that show, Legal AF, that we talk so much about? Here's a clip. Maybe you'll like it, and maybe that'll get them to join us. If you have no idea what I'm talking about here on the MeidasTouch Network, that was Legal AF. I'm Michael Popok, and until my next hot take, we invite you to join Legal AF and be part of our audience. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.